Chris knew like the really obscure things that are not everywhere. So like he'd really done his research. So it was a case of, okay, well, they're confident in me and what I do. And what I need to try and do is block out all the other noise about the show and how big it is and how much people like it and how passionate everyone is. I just need to do what I do, and that's it. And I did get a lot of latitude and room from Matt and Chris to just try things. And they were really clear. They're like, don't be afraid to try anything, but whatever it is, go for it. That's what we want. That's what we're after. Be bold. Don't be afraid. Keep it fresh. Do what you do.
Segun Akinola is a British-Nigerian composer for film and television. He's most known for his music in the 3 series of Doctor Who starring the first female Doctor, Jodie Whittaker. A BAFTA Breakthrough Brit in 2017, Segun's other work includes scoring Sundance 2019 favorite and World Soundtrack Award nominee The Last Tree, Apple TV Plus feature 9/11 Inside the President's War Room, and the BBC's landmark series Black and British: A Forgotten History. His recent projects include Origin, the story of the Basketball Africa League, which premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival in September, and the BBC series Kingdom, narrated by David Attenborough. Segun talks to me about music as storytelling, the importance of determination, and how we undervalue asking for help, the power of curiosity to drive learning, and creative growth through collaboration, and a whole lot more. Here's my conversation with Segun Akinola. Segun, welcome to Follow Your Curiosity.
Thanks for having me. Sorry it's taken so long for me to be here, but I'm genuinely very much looking forward to chatting.
Me too. So I start everyone with the same question. Were you a creative kid, or did you discover your creative side later on?
Do you know what's fascinating for me about this question is that I have a daughter a daughter and a son now, actually. So I have a baby as well. But I have a daughter who's a toddler. And it's fascinating to me seeing her response to anything creative, anything at all. And I mean, she kind of loves all of it, whether it's art or dancing. The fascinating thing, though, is music, because she's basically always been extremely responsive to music literally from the moment that she was here. Where other babies were like not bothered, she was always has always responded to it. And it's fascinating to me because then I kind of go back to my parents, who one day my dad came home with a piano or a keyboard, and I must have been 5 years old. And I asked him about it a couple of years ago, because I just thought that's quite random. Like, why did you come home with a keyboard? And they said it's because I was really responsive musically. And I didn't know that at all until a couple of years ago. So I think that it's definitely the case that I connected with music. I probably connected with art as well, because I know that my eldest sister was really artsy, and I always kind of, loved seeing what she was up to. So I think there was always something there, for sure.
All right. That's great that he noticed and bought that keyboard.
Yes, very grateful.
Did you spend a lot of time on it?
Weirdly, I can't remember. I actually remember him coming home with it, but I can't remember what happened next. But I mean, I guess I didn't stop. I know that I then started having piano lessons from someone else, like another. I mean, he was probably like 16 years old, but someone from our church who started teaching me piano. And then after a while, I then went on and got a proper piano teacher, and things just kind of went on from that point, really.
Yeah, so I think it sounds like it's safe to say that nobody discouraged you.
No, certainly not from learning. I mean, my parents were always very encouraging. For them, they kind of came over from Nigeria, so it was very much a case of my sisters and I having opportunities that they didn't necessarily have, and they worked hard to kind of make those possible for us. So yeah, we all played something at some point, but I think I was the one who stuck with it all the time, basically.
And now you're writing music for movies. It's amazing how that happens.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things that I think when you're in it, it doesn't seem so far fetched because it's a thing that I've been dreaming about since I was uh, probably 16. At least specifically when it comes to like music for film and TV, that was from 16. So to me, it's not that bizarre. It's like, oh my gosh, what's this thing? I must find a way to like be able to do it. And I was just worked really, really, really hard. And it's more so at this kind of stage where you kind of take a step back and see friends from school or that kind of thing. And they're like, whoa, this is cool. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess it is. I'm in it and enjoying it and loving the fact that I get to truly love what I do. But then in those moments, I realized, oh, yeah, it is kind of a bit odd to have kind of gone down this path.
It's normal for you because it's your life. But yeah, it
Yeah.
is something that not very many people get to do, which is also really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, um, do my best not to take it for granted. I mean, to be fair though, I really do love what I do. It's not a case of I've done this for a while and I'm really grumpy. I'm like, no, I'm really excited to start the day. Obviously, I'm not excited to start every day. Sometimes there's something really boring that I don't want to do. Obviously, like it is still real life, and there are parts of it that are the job, as it were. But there is also so much of it which is just, wait, hold on, I get to do this and do it for a living, and I'm just kind of here having fun. I'm like a kid in a candy shop, and that happens a lot of the time. So yeah, I don't take it for granted, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, it's great to be able to do that, even when it's not what you do for a living. I think we forget
Yeah,
how much we get out of the things that light us up. And, we prioritize all the things that don't because obviously we have to pay our bills and that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
yeah, to be able to do any of those things in any capacity is such a treat.
yeah. I think if you can do anything and get lost in it, that's really positive because it shows that you're doing something that you love doing in whatever capacity that is. Whether that's you've always wanted to learn piano and you've never learned piano and you start learning piano and you enjoy doing it. I think that is always really special.
Yeah. So I'm curious, since you mentioned that you've known since you were 16, was there a particular thing that happened when you were 16?
Yes. So by this point, I knew that I wanted to work in music. I was specifically looking at becoming a record producer. So I was really influenced by Quincy Jones, Arif Mardin, Walt Afanasieff, Dave Foster, extremely popular, amazing, and successful arranger producers who could just move around musically, do lots of different things. Um, so I knew that at that point, I wanted to be a record producer. So I learned, and I had been learning for years, all that I could about recording studios and recording and production and everything. But what happened when I was 16 is that I went to stay. My sisters are quite a bit older than me, so although they won't appreciate me saying that, but but they are. So, um, so I kind of had like half of another mum between them.
Hmm.
Um, I went to stay with them one summer, and they uh, they're like effectively the equivalent of like cable subscription. Something wasn't working, and I think we had to. It was like we could just watch DVDs, and I was like, cool. And for some reason, they had a DVD of Transformers, and I was like, cool. And I watched it, not expecting anything, and it was literally the moment that changed everything for me. And I can't tell you why, because I was aware of music in films before that point, for sure. We'd done. Um, I'm trying to think about what the equivalent is. So our wind and brass bands are not as cool as your marching bands in the States, but think of like a less cool, funky version. And that's what our wind and brass bands were like. But we played some music from I think The Incredibles and a few other things. So I was aware of music in films. I don't know what lit the spark specifically with Transformers. I can't quite figure it out, but something did, and it just came alive um, in an instant, effectively. And from that point onwards, I was like, "What is this thing?" And I basically then spent more of my life on YouTube and Wikipedia, so like trying to find out who are these people, they're living people, what do they do, what is this thing, how does it work? Just I think I benefited from being of an age where YouTube was a thing. It's not
Mhm.
what it is now. It's quite interesting. Like, I think about YouTube then to now, it's basically completely different. But you had a lot of like behind the scenes featurettes from DVDs that would be put onto YouTube, those kind of things, or someone being interviewed, a composer being interviewed. Um, so there's a lot of content like that. And so I think it was just a great moment to have discovered something that I loved, but also to have the means to find out more about it quite easily as well. So I was able to just find out about people and listen and watch as many interviews as I could. So it meant that at least I knew something about it. It wasn't completely far off and mystical. It was real and tangible.
Yeah, I'm just imagining, you know, I don't even remember now how old YouTube is, but, if it had been before then you have that isolated sense of people apparently do this, and I wanna know more, but I don't even know where to go to find out.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's what I think was key for me. And I think you see this because when I think of some composers who are more experienced, let's say, um, born a few decades earlier, it for them, I feel like you hear more stories where people fell into it. You know, they were musicians some other capacity and they fell into it. Whereas I think for myself and a lot of the other composers who are around the same kind of age, there was much more intent. Whether that's because there were university degrees by that point, there was YouTube, there were so many more avenues, and there are even more now. Because now it's not even just about a degree; it's that you can do a course on YouTube or online on some other platform. But so I think that I definitely felt like there were a lot of people kind of around the same age who've got lots of experience because they knew from a similar age or 12 or 13 or 18 or something that they wanted to do this and they've been able to gather the information. And I think that's why there are more younger composers who have, had a lot of experience or potentially more than they might have had.
Well, and that's an interesting point too, because when you hear the word composer, most of us think of, Mozart or Beethoven or somebody from a couple hundred years ago. And we kind of forget that obviously there are present day people writing the music in the movies, that everybody we hear on the radio, no matter what genre they're writing, is composing what they're performing, or someone is composing it for them. So there is sort of that tendency to think that composers are old dead white guys, and that, you know, who's doing that now? And yet there are clearly a lot of people who are out there making all sorts of cool music that we may or may not even notice when we're sitting through a movie or watching TV.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's what's been exciting about the last few years is the sheer amount of platforms and content and desire for something that is a little bit different and people coming into it from lots of different backgrounds and experiences. And I think the landscape for writing music for film and TV specifically is really interesting at this point because there's always going to be some sense of mainstream, but there's a lot more that's happening towards the edges of that and also outside of that as well. And I think it makes everything richer when that's the case.
Yeah. And yet I'm also thinking, I talked to Dominic Glynn last year, and for him, he when he decided that he wanted to, like, I think just do incidental music was where he thought he would start with Doctor Who. He just sent a letter to John Nathan Turner and ended up getting a response, which I can't imagine happening today. So it seems to me like, there is this, there's less gatekeeping, but at the same time, that probably means more competition, or maybe my guess is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that I have any facts and figures, but I would assume that is the case because the barriers to, at the very least, information are so low now compared to where they were, say, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 or 40 years ago as well. And it's not just, as I say, that you can go and study at the university. You can study on a course on YouTube or some other online platform. And it means that more people want to do it. There is more competition. It means that, conversely, it means that there are more people who are looking for for people to work with as well. So and I think that's kind of what drew me to the whole, writing music for film and TV thing, because I loved stories growing up. And in this world, anything goes as long as you find the right music for that project. So if you've got something that's really, really dark, there is some film or show out there that needs that. You just have to find it. And that's what's exciting, that your creativity isn't limited by the fact that it has to be a certain way. Of course, there are certain things you have to do. You have to work with the material you're working with, right? So you can't suddenly put something really dark and scary on an animated feature film for kids. That's like, well, that's not good. That's not really going to work in that scenario. But there's a film out there that needs that music, um, and all the different shades between everything that you can think of, whether it's light and funny or quirky or bizarre, whatever it is, there's something out there that needs that music. You just have to find it. I think that's quite exciting.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I was just thinking the barrier's been lowered for filmmaking too. So there are more films undoubtedly now than there ever have been before. So it probably all kind of comes out in the wash. There's more composers and there's more
Yes.
filmmakers, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that. There's more of everything. And I think that's good. It makes it much easier for people to do things. It makes it much easier for people to try things as well.
Yeah.
You might think that you want to do it, and then you get into a situation and you're dealing with the reality of working with a director. They don't like the first thing that you've done, and you have to work on something that's completely different. You might not enjoy that process. Conversely, you might love it and love the collaboration. And so you figure that out and you realize, do you know what? I really love this kind of composing, and maybe there's something else that you didn't know about that you didn't love. So it's definitely very good from that perspective.
Yeah. So how did you actually make the move from learning everything that you could get your hands on to having films to work on?
I always say that my only talent is my determination, because I was very, very determined, extremely determined. And that just pushes you into certain situations, whether it's a case of, well, actually, the good example here is that I had someone who came in to teach composition at my school. I think it was once a week or once every 2 weeks, something like that. And after I'd seen Transformers, and I was like, oh my gosh, this thing, and I want to do this film TV thing. And he happened to have a friend who was a film and TV composer, but he said, look, this guy's quite elusive, so I don't know if I'll be able to get hold of him. And I was like, please, just like try and make contact. Now, 100%, this is a true story. I didn't hear anything for a little while, and it was coming up to, I think, the summer, and I was looking to do some work experience in the summer. I hadn't heard anything, so I knew the guy's name, so I literally just went onto his website, found an email address, and I emailed him directly. And in the end, he got back to me and he was like, "Look, I I'm really impressed by the fact that you really want to do this. You're really kind of coming after it. So why don't you come see me on this date and let's go for a coffee?" Days later, I kid you not, an email lands that should have landed days before saying that he wasn't available and he couldn't actually do it because he's really busy. But that it didn't, for whatever reason, I did not receive that email when I was supposed to. So I went and contacted him directly. And anyway, I then actually went and I saw him and I did some work experience for him. And then the following summer, he hired me as his assistant whilst he was working on a TV show. All of this happened before I'd gone and done my undergrad, so it was quite an early stage for it to happen. But it meant that I learned a lot
Wow.
at quite a young age. And the reason why it links through to me then doing something is because the film that composer was working on, the first summer that I did some work experience with him, was then at a film festival and he invited me and I went to that film festival. And being a young, inexperienced kid, I I was late. I'd forgotten something for my train ticket or something. So I was late and one of my sisters was going as well to come see the film. And so she got there before me. And because it was a film festival, they had like a number of films on. They had some networking drinks and things. She got talking to someone. I arrived in time for the film, went to see the film, and then hung up with my sister afterwards. And she'd met some people when she was kind of waiting for me. Turns out she'd met a director and a producer. So then I spoke to the director and the producer, and then the director asked me to like get in touch with him the next day, and I did. And not thinking anything would necessarily come of it, but around, I don't know, 6 to 18 months later, because I can't remember, he was working on a like leisure TV series and needed some music, and he asked me if I would do it. And then that's when I had like my first proper gig. So it just shows you how like something can come from almost nothing, or certainly from unexpected places.
Well, and also, just the power of asking, I
Yeah,
think is so enormous and so undervalued.
yeah,
If you, I, I don't love the expression, if you don't ask, you don't get, because it's got to be a line from some old movie or something. It feels like it, but it's true.
yeah,
If you assume that, this person that somebody else knows and mentioned to you isn't going to want to talk to you because you're too fresh, you don't know anything, whatever, you're definitely not going to get to talk to them.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I love that you didn't get that email.
Yeah, I mean that was yeah, I found that just such a bizarre moment because obviously as I've mentioned, that was the beginning of a lot of things, because then I got my first gig, and then with all the money that I earned from that, I enrolled on a course and I got some headshots and got a website design, and then that led to me meeting more people and so many other things, as well as my experience with this composer who's been a mentor to me for a number of years, for whom I learned so much ahead of the time at which I needed that information. And it really, really set me up for how I thought about what I'm doing or certain situations just in advance. So I often found that I could lean on what I learned. And I learned a lot because when you come into something like this, it's not like school where I don't know, you want to become a doctor and you can relatively easily have access to some kind of understanding of what it means to be a doctor, working shifts and this kind of thing. It's like there's absolutely nothing until you're there with someone who's doing it. So yeah, I learned a great deal. Great deal.
How was it to go from working with someone like that to, you mentioned this was before your undergrad. When you went to school, like, was it kind of weird? Did you already know the stuff that they were trying to teach you in your intro classes, or did it kind of come together in a good way?
It came together in a really good way. My undergrad was just composition at a classical music school, so it wasn't focused on film and TV. So it was pretty broad in that sense. But the reason why it kind of came together is because I met two other students who are now, well, not now. I mean, they extremely quickly became my best friends. Um, so, uh, but I met two other basically like-minded people um, who we were the three who were like, we want to do film and TV stuff. And we basically just immediately, we just clicked. It was like the first day as well. We just clicked. And one of the parts of my undergrad that was such a joy was kind of going through it with them, because we learned so much from each other. Because one person knew some stuff because they had some experience or knew someone, and someone knew something else, and we just learned so much from each
Oh,
other. I
that's so cool.
always feel that I learned as much from them. I mean, at least as much as what I learned from my actual course, completely. Um, so it helped because I had something to offer that I learned from my experience, assisting someone, and they'd learned other things, and we just kind of grew in that way.
Yeah, I think that shows the balance. You can learn plenty from regular school sources and books and YouTube videos and whatever, but there's also so much to be learned from actual experience.
Yeah, definitely with something like this, because often one of the difficulties of this line of work is that the people who are completely in the know are the people who are working regularly, which means that they're too busy to be, not all of them, there are absolutely caveats to this, but as a generalization, they're often too busy to be teaching.
Mhm.
And there are people who are successful and are teaching. I have no idea how they do it and how they kind of manage that, but it's not it's not what most people are able to do, and that obviously means that there can be an information kind of deficit for students, because what they're getting is probably quite close, but not like from the horse's mouth. People who are on the ground absolutely doing it day in, day out, which is why being an assistant for another composer is such an important part of most people's trajectory, um, because that's where you really learn what it's like in the real world, not what you think it's like, or some kind of idealized version of what it means to be a composer for film and TV.
Yeah. Yeah. I know they always say academia is a little bit behind what everybody else is doing in
Yeah,
almost any field, so that makes a lot of sense. I'm
yeah,
curious
yeah.
to know, like, what what your process looks like. You mentioned storytelling through music, which is something that probably is gonna make a lot of people raise an eyebrow, even though we've all been to the movies and, we all know that the movies would be very different if there were no music in it, even if we don't notice it. But I'm curious to know how that works for you.
I mean, for me, that's the bit that I've always loved. You know, Uh, I see myself as a filmmaker. It's just my creative weapon of choice is not a camera or my ability to act or direct. It's music. That's the means through which I am a filmmaker, and that's all about storytelling, and that's all I'm doing musically. Um, it's a character walks through a door and goes and talks to someone. Is that character accompanied by some kind of like heavy metal music? That's going to tell me one thing about them. Is it accompanied by really emotional, romantic music? That's going to tell me something else. It's that's all the music's doing. That's all that I'm doing in the situation. But it all comes from a love of story, and I think that's why, for me, I'm always kind of talking to directors and writers about like story and what's going on. And if I ever get stuck, I try and break it down to what is the story in this moment? If it's a really long scene and lots of things are happening, and it's kind of sometimes difficult to really distill it, that's what I'll be trying to do. What is happening right now? Maybe it's not really about what we are seeing, it's about what that character is feeling. So, and maybe that, is that, maybe that juxtaposes what we're actually seeing. So I'm kind of honing in on, okay, well, what's the character's emotion? It's, I don't know, some kind of sadness. So even though we're seeing something that might look happy, there's some kind of sadness in the music. That's storytelling. That's kind of getting you underneath the layers of the character to the heart of what's really going on. Of course, it's not always that. Sometimes someone's being chased, and it is just someone being chased, and that's it. But it's always, for me, it's all about the storytelling. It's why my favorite bit of the process is actually just being sat down and writing and figuring out how to tell the story in a particular scene or a particular sequence. And especially if it's hard, because eventually I have to crack it. So it means that I will get to the point where it is working through a lot of hard work and lots of trial and error. And sometimes, honestly, it's really hard. But I find that usually those cues where it's been so difficult are the ones that I end up being most proud of, because I've found a way, obviously in a collaborative way with the director or producers, to tell the story in the best way possible.
It's always the hard things that we're the most proud of, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when you think something that comes naturally is really great and it's there, and so, all the things that you kind of hope for, there's something about the uphill struggle of something that's difficult, but which you have to just keep working at to get. And maybe that's partly because you end up doing something that's not what you expect. That's certainly part of it for me, that sometimes, because of the people you're working with, you get led down paths that you wouldn't go down yourself. And that's really fascinating. It pushes you to different areas and you think, oh, I didn't know that I could do this, or I didn't know that I could mix these genres together, or whatever it might be, or I don't know how to write for this instrument. I have to learn how to do it. Um, but that kind of hard work and then seeing the real tangible result is always really enjoyable.
It's striking me how, if you had decided to be a standalone composer, your experience and your music would be so different, because you would be doing it just on your own without all of those influences. I'm finding that really, really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I could say that my creative life would probably be worse for it if that was all that I did, because for me, and I do stuff that is not film and TV, and it is like just my own thing, and that's always been part of what I wanted to do. But I love the collaboration, and I love the telling of stories, and I love working on something that then people can go and enjoy, whether it's something very like family friendly. So it becomes the reason why some people sit down together as a family and watch something. Um, whether it's just something that I know, oh, my sister-in-law really loves this kind of show, and I've poured tons of work into this thing, and it's nice knowing that actually that someone I know really well is going to enjoy it, and that's going to bring them joy. I love that. For me, I love the fact that other people get to enjoy all of that hard work, and it's different for different people. Some people it's just the pure process of creation, and I obviously really enjoy that. But I love that then other people get to experience it and enjoy it.
Yeah. And I know, like, there are film scores that stick with me. Like, one of my favorites is the score from Sneakers,
Oh, interesting.
which I
Yeah.
think was James Horner. I have his
Mm.
name right, with Branford Marsalis, and it's just this really, really atmospheric music that fits that movie so well.
Mm.
And it's one that comes up sometimes in conversation about favorite scores. If people have seen that movie, and if you haven't seen that movie, it's a real treat. You should see it. But things like that that stand out. Not just everybody knows the James Bond theme.
Yeah,
It's not just that. It's the ones that where you sit there and you just are like, oh, I think I need to go, in the old days, buy this CD because I want to hear this again
yeah,
and really kind of get into it and play it in the car and whatever and feel it because it did something to me.
yeah,
I think that's how you really know, at least for me as somebody watching, if the score has done its job, is that it's not dominating things, but you still feel something from it and you notice it just enough to notice that it had that effect.
yeah. I mean, that's always the dream scenario, because everything in this world is on this nice edge between craft and art, and needing to fulfill the craft, but desiring to fulfill the art of it as well. And sometimes you kind of lean more on one. Well, I'm not sure that sometimes you lean more on one or the other. I think if you lean more one side, it's always going to end up being craft, because you have to get something that fits a particular form and function. But the best work is absolutely both. And for me, that's definitely what I'm kind of aiming for, is something that can fulfill both, that kind of, on the one hand, cannot be so noticeable in a negative way as to take people out of the viewing experience, but which can have a powerful effect, um, which helps with the whole, the whole viewing experience for people. I know that I've had those experiences where I listen to I watch something, and I have to go home straight away and start playing it. Find the soundtrack, figure it out, just be like, what is this thing? And it has such a powerful effect. And that's definitely what you want and what you aim for in the right kind of projects that you're working on.
Yeah. Yeah. Those moments and the recognizable scores. I'm thinking a year or two ago, I found I think it was like a 15-minute suite of the music from North by Northwest.
Sure.
And I was just so intrigued. I've seen that movie so many times. It's such a great movie. The opening theme gets your attention right away. And I
Yeah.
sat down with these headphones on and just, like people used to do 50 years ago when you would sit down with your headphones on and the cord next to the stereo so you weren't going anywhere and
Yeah.
just listen to something. And it was amazing to me to have that experience where I wasn't actually seeing the images so I could focus on the music, but I also could take a pretty good guess as to what was happening in each of those sections from that score because I had seen it so many times. It was so fascinating to do that, to just sit down and pay attention and remember while also noticing more than you do while you're watching the film.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's why it's the best scores fulfill the craft, but also the art, because somehow they have to be great music in and of themselves,
Yeah.
but whilst actually fulfilling the purpose of telling the story. And that's really difficult to do. It's not straightforward. And I think that's why sometimes those scores that can have a really powerful effect and really kind of hit you, because they're able to do both. And it's not easy to do that. And I know that for me, particularly now, those moments happen more, well, they're more rare, should I say, because when I was younger, it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I kind of miss some of those moments of wonder where you don't know how someone's done something. Now it's more like I'm deconstructing at the same time as I
Yeah.
try not to. Um, and I think actually, if it really grabs me, I'm really not. I'm just taking it in, and I'm not deconstructing, and it can have that effect. Um, but it can be really powerful, and it's what's exciting about doing this work, that different things hit people in different ways. It's one of the things that's fascinating about working in music for film and TV, because even when you're working on something, you have a director, you have a producer, you have a script, and everyone can have a slightly different feeling to some music and a slightly different response. And so you're kind of trying to navigate the different responses and the different experiences people have had with music and what effect it has on them. Like some people who really love jazz, and some people who don't love jazz, and some people who, if you put the piano in, it means jazz. That's the end of that sentence. There's no kind of rhyme or reason. It's just, if there's piano, it means jazz, and it's not a jazz scene. So why is there piano? And you're kind of navigating all of these experiences that people have had musically. So it's always really exciting to kind of work on different things and know that actually one project is going to impact one person and another will impact someone else. It will have a different effect on different people.
Yeah. And when you're talking about trying to sit through somebody else's movie and not deconstruct everything, it occurs to me, I think so many fans now are more attuned to all of the elements that go into any part of the filmmaking, the lighting, the music, the directing, whatever. And definitely in the last 10, maybe 15 years, I've heard more people talking about, oh, but then they played this character's theme again, and I don't like that theme, or they shouldn't use it so often, or something like that. So they're deconstructing while they're listening too. Does that influence how you put your music together, or do you just kind of isolate yourself from all of that?
Definitely a case of isolating. I feel like when it comes to actually making the film or the TV series, it's definitely not even on the agenda at all. When it comes to a soundtrack album, I think it becomes a little bit more of an agenda, kind of understanding that there's probably someone out there who's going to notice that this person's theme was shorter in the film or the TV show than it is in the album, which could be for various reasons, like they edited parts of the score after the fact, and it just doesn't make sense or isn't straightforward to kind of reconstruct what was done. But the other side of it is that there are people who are going to listen to your work really, really closely. They're going to be really attentive to what you do, and they really care about what you do, and they're passionate about what you do, and they're excited about what you do. And that's really special. And that's something to be treasured, that people want to listen that closely to the work that you've done on something. Yeah, sure. If it's the next Star Wars film, you can expect that on a large scale, but even on stuff that's much smaller, there's usually always someone who's going to listen really carefully. And yeah, that's always great to know that there are people who care that much.
Yeah. It's amazing to me how TV viewing has changed that way so much in the last decade or two.
Yeah.
This is a time when no one would have noticed anything.
Yeah. Yeah, long gone are those days. But I think what's interesting now is with the different ways that shows are released, particularly when it comes to shows, whether it's kind of chapters on Netflix or it's weekly on Apple or whatever it might be, that affects what people say musically, in a sense that if it comes out weekly, everyone's experiencing it at roughly the same time. Whereas if it all comes out at once, people are having different experiences at different times. So you don't get that moment where, oh, actually everyone's watching that last episode and they're all kind of going to go through this emotional roller coaster. You don't know when people have had it because they're all watching it at different times. So the feedback that you get from that can come out at different times. But then obviously also we have social media, so you can get that information quite quickly usually as well. Yeah.
So social media kind of made it impossible to take your time going through a TV show if you don't want to be spoiled, or, all of that too. So it's interesting how the whole entertainment scene has evolved that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm curious, obviously we first spoke at a Doctor Who convention. And so for you coming into a show like that has such a huge fan base that does pay attention, sometimes to a degree that I think is probably almost pathological. And I count myself in that occasionally. What was it like for you to come into Doctor Who and, be handed this iconic theme tune to rework and, an iconic TV show to do the rest of the music for too?
It was all a whirlwind, really, because I didn't know anything about anything. Like I hadn't been watching the show. I hadn't grown up watching the show, so I didn't have any really close association at all. And I didn't know that Murray wasn't going to be doing it or anything like that. So it was all just like, oh, okay, this is happening, and apparently I'm going to talk to Chris Chibnall or someone, or what, this whole process. I mean, I knew who Chris was, but just what's kind of going on, and it was really quick between the first phone call and me actually getting the job was really, really quick. There was a much longer time after that point where they were still filming and I wasn't going to be working for a few months and all that kind of thing. But the other side to it, though, is that I actually studied the radiophonic workshop at school as quite an important chapter or section of the music course that I did. So I was really aware of the radiophonic workshop and the impact. And actually, one thing I missed is that the very first composer interview that I read this was before I was even into film and TV music, was an interview with Murray talking about Doctor Who. So I was really aware of the past with the radiophonic workshop, but also the recent past in terms of what Murray was doing and what he'd done and the impact it had, and from the interview what he was thinking musically. So I was very aware of the love for the show. I was very aware of the significance as well, and that probably fed the sheer terror when it came to the theme. Thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? But one of the great so to just go into the process a little bit, what I did is I'm trying to remember if it was an official thing or not. I don't think it was official, but I just had a chat with Chris, and I think I already went into it thinking on, well, either thinking that, yeah, I'll just write something, or maybe someone had mentioned something, I'm not sure, but I had a chat with Chris and I wrote some music after the chat, just as here's an example of the kind of thing that I'm thinking. So it was a pitch. One of the things I love about the pitching process is that it's all or nothing. It's one of the reasons some people don't like it, because the first idea might not be great, but then the collaboration, through collaboration, you might do another idea that's really great. But for me, if you do something that people love that first time, there's a lot of buy-in to your creative ideas and what you're thinking. And that's what happened. That's what happened this time around. So had a really good chat, got lots of thoughts and ideas. I went away and wrote something, and it went down extremely well. And I've told the story before. What I wrote was the Doctor's theme, and it did not change one note at all from when the series then went out. Or, no, 13's theme, I should say, specifically. And so for me, it was really a case of, I just get to put everything into this. And if they like it, they like it. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. And that's fair enough. Because it was liked, it meant that there's a degree of, as I say, buy into your creative ideas. And I know that some, okay, well, they liked this and like what I do. And, over time, then I found out that, they'd done a lot of research into me that kind of really knew my work. Like Chris knew the really obscure things that are not everywhere. So he'd really done his research. So it was a case of, okay, well, they're confident in me and what I do. And what I need to try and do is block out all the other noise about the show and how big it is and how much people like it and how passionate everyone is. I just need to do what I do, and that's it. And I remember a really significant moment for me was actually that I then my my cousin, who's sadly not with us anymore, came around, and he's always really interested in like the music I'm doing. And so we kind of went through, and I was like, "What have you been doing over the last year? Like, play me some stuff." And I remembered that I went through that process with him, and it actually reminded me of what what I've been doing and what everything sounds like. And after that, I was like, "Do you know what? I think I know what this needs to be." And I always remember that after that point, I was like, "Okay, I just need to do what I do and just play around and experiment and find something that works and see where that goes." And I did get a lot of latitude and room from Matt and Chris to just try things. And they were really clear. They're like, "Don't be afraid to try anything, like whatever it is, go for it. That's what we want. That's what we're after. Be bold. Don't be afraid. Keep it fresh. Do what you do." Um, Obviously, if they didn't like it, they would reel me in. But it just ended up feeding into where Chris was taking the show.
I feel like do what you do is both the easiest and hardest piece of advice to follow, but it's also
Yeah,
so important. I mean, I know every time I've tried to, adapt the style of what I do to fit what I think is more appropriate for somebody else or for a different situation, doesn't necessarily go as well as if I just do what I do.
yeah,
It
yeah.
seems so simple, but it isn't always.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of you have to know what you do. And that, I think, is a process. Certainly for me, that was a process kind of like earlier on in my career of just trying lots of things, anything and everything. I mean, I really was very determined to improve and try things. And I had an experience where um, I think probably the moment it started is that I did a horror short really early on, really, really early on, um, in my undergrad days. And just, I realized that, oh, okay, well, I actually really enjoyed this experience. And that means I need to keep trying new things that I haven't done before to see what I like and what I don't like. And so it just meant that I would always try things. I would find a clip online, any clip I could find, and I can't. Is it the Hubble telescope? There are like lots of free clips online, I think, and it would be like a 30-second clip of something happening with a planet, and I would set myself the task of scoring it like a '90s action film.
Oh, cool.
And so I would go and I'd be listening to things, and I would some composers, I won't name them in case they shouldn't have done it, but some composers put up like scores online on their website. And I was like, download, download, download. Thank you very much. I'm going to study this and figure out what it is you're doing and how you're doing it. So then I would try all of those things out and just like, oh, okay, so this is what a 90s thing is like. Okay, what if I try and do it like a more contemporary noughties action score? Okay, what does that mean? So then I'd go away and I would, lots of critical listening and trying to apply the same thing. Through that, it wasn't just it wasn't about the perfect pastiche piece, but it was about understanding music and analyzing music and trying lots of different things. And within that framework, trying to do something that's like me, trying to do something that's me, but I didn't really know what that was. So it was just trying lots of different things and realizing, oh, okay, well, I really like themes and how themes can work. But what is a theme? And then, you try looking at scores that are really melodic and then looking at scores that are not, but are still thematic. Maybe it's because maybe it's their motifs, maybe it's a sound, maybe it's a couple of chords, whatever it might be. So just trying these things out, doing short films, then trying these techniques out in reality as well. Just kind of having all these experiences to figure out what it is that what I liked and I didn't like. And then in that moment where it's, do what you do, I have a better idea and understanding of, okay, well, this is what I do, this is what I like. I think it's distinctive. That's always the thing that I'm trying to do. I'm not keen on the word unique because if everything's unique, then nothing is unique. But I think everything can still be distinctive. So I'm always trying to do something that has its own sound. Or a good example is in the case of Doctor Who, I wanted every series to sound a little bit different. And I purposefully tweaked the sound world every series so that well, for anyone who listens really carefully, they'd be able to know this is series 12, this is series 13, this is series 11. I want it to be like this, the story's moving forward, so the music should move forward as well.
That's really cool. And I think you've encapsulated, what courses are trying to teach you is what all of those people have done before. But
Yeah.
when you're actually sitting down and kind of reverse engineering it, I think you have, I don't know how better to put this than, like, you get into it, you kind of burrow into it in a way that is more enlightening than just hearing about it in a class, which
Yeah.
is not to disparage. There are really good teachers who can help you with that kind of stuff too. But I think when you are actually sitting there trying to figure out what makes something tick that someone else did, how did they pull off, this effect? How did they, in my MFA, it was like, kind of, how did they write this scene and make this part work? I think you immerse yourself in it in a different way. But the net result is you've picked up these things from all of these pieces and all these places, and then you integrate them in that way that is uniquely yours because you bring your
Yeah.
own lens to it. And so I think there's so much value in that beyond and above what you can learn in a class, which you should definitely take classes too, because they can speed things up. But there's
Yeah.
so much to be gained that way.
Yeah, I think it's definitely that there are pros and cons. Different people learn in different ways, but if you can do both, which is what I was trying to do, because I was, doing my masters and my undergrad, and I was doing all of these things. It's all about learning as much as you can, so that you can be the best version of yourself that you can be. That's what I want to do. I want to write the best music that I possibly can. I still haven't done that. That's still something I'm searching for. I want it to be the best musically. I want it to tell the story. I want it to sound the best, everything. And that's a lifelong ambition.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good lifelong ambition
Yeah.
because then you keep learning,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
is great.
absolutely. And that's part of it. Always be a student of life. You can always learn. There's no point at which I think I've learned everything. And I always want that to be, a key part of my, how I think about the world and what I do, is that there's always something that you can learn.
Yeah. I know you have a new project coming out, and I want to make sure you have a chance to tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kingdom is BBC Studios and BBC America's new natural history or nature series that's narrated by David Attenborough. It's out on the 24th of January in America on BBC America and also AMC Plus. And it's a little bit different to your Planet Earth and your Blue Planet. It's a bit more like Planet Earth meets Dynasties. Dynasties was a series that basically told stories about characters and followed them around. In this instance, it's literally that there are 4 families. It's one location, and it's the longest they've filmed in one location before. And they followed these families for 5 years. And it's just telling that story of what happened over 5 years. It's kind of being billed as like Game of Thrones meets Planet Earth meets Dynasties
Wow.
meets Succession, with a lot of drama. That's the key thing, and kind of, I guess, underlining and bringing out the drama that's taking place from someone who's challenging the matriarch of a pack or whatever it might be, and there's a lot of that happens over this time. So yeah, that's the first thing that I've got coming out.
That sounds amazing. Definitely like a lot
Yeah.
of really fascinating storytelling going on there for you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it was a really special project to work on. It was filmed in Zambia, and because the location was such a big part of it, I flew out to Zambia and I recorded with Zambian singers and musicians, and I also sampled some Zambian instruments as well. And they're all a really, really, really important part of the final score. And the whole point was to make it sound a little bit different. So you've got the Zambian stuff. You've got, yes, it's orchestral, but I've got some jazzy double bass in there. I've got bass flutes. I've got bass recorders, all sorts of things, just to, again, try and make it distinctive and a bit different, but still do the things you want it to do, but also be more intimate. That was another part of the show, that the music should be really intimate at times as well. So it does that. It really does that.
It sounds amazing. I can't wait to check it out and see
Yeah,
how
I'm
much
very
I'm
excited about
paying more attention to the music this time than I might
it.
otherwise.
Yeah, it's. I'm really, really excited about it. And I also have another show called Origin: The Story of Basketball Africa League, which is coming out on ESPN as well, which is all about the NBA starting their first league outside of the US, because they started this league in Africa, with the whole idea that it gives Africa its own league. It means that for some people, they might start there, move over to the NBA as well. So it's the story of the first season, which took place during the COVID-19 pandemic, which is quite a difficult moment at which to start a league in Africa. But they went ahead with it, and it was well, I don't want to give anything away, but it's a very uplifting watch.
Excellent. Well, I will include links to those if I can, so that folks can go find them easily, and we'll look forward to checking them out. I have to admit, a series about a basketball league is not something that would probably fly to the top of my list, but that sounds really, really fascinating. So I can give it a look.
Yeah, I think what's nice about it is that the human story is there. The impact of the league on the way they did it is basically they chose like the top the top team from 12 countries, and they brought them together. So it's not just the fact that it happened, it's the people who are involved. Some teams are all pro, some teams are semi-pro, some teams are no real pros. They're also, as I say, it's during the COVID-19 pandemic. They built a new stadium in Rwanda for it as well. So there's the impact that it has on the local area and economy. So it touches on everything. It doesn't shy away at all. It's really, but it's still a very uplifting watch as well.
Fantastic. Well, I so appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with me today. I've found this a fascinating conversation and reminders of lots of good principles for how to dig into something and make the most out of it, and remember to ask.
Yeah, always remember to ask. No, it's been a real pleasure. It's really nice to have such an engaging chat, and to really to someone who can kind of pick up on lots of interesting things and lead the conversation in interesting directions. So yeah, it's been a real joy. Thanks for having me.
I'm so grateful to Segun Akinola for joining me this week, and to you for watching. Segun's links are in the show notes, and I really hope that you will leave a review or a comment for this episode, and that if you enjoyed it, you'll share it with a friend. There is a link below, and it is really, really easy, and it makes a big difference. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and as always, thanks again for joining me.